What happens when the world's greatest author of mysteries becomes the central character in her own unsolved case? In the winter of 1926, Agatha Christie, the undisputed queen of crime, vanished without a trace, sparking a nationwide manhunt and a media frenzy that would create a mystery far stranger than any she had ever conceived in her fiction. This is the true story of her 11 lost days. The story begins on the cold, dark evening of Friday, December 3rd, 1926. Agatha Christie was already a household name, celebrated for her ingenious plots and the creation of Detective Hercule Poirot. But her private life was in turmoil. Her beloved mother had recently passed away, and she was struggling with grief. Worse, her husband of 12 years, Colonel Archibald Christie, had confessed he was in love with another woman. That fateful evening, the simmering tension in their Berkshire home, named Styles, finally boiled over. Archie announced his intention to spend the weekend away with his friends, and with his mistress, a woman named Nancy Neal. A bitter argument erupted between the couple. Following the confrontation, Archie left for his weekend getaway, leaving Agatha alone with her thoughts and the ruins of their marriage. Later that night at approximately 9:45 p.m., Agatha Christie walked upstairs, kissed her sleeping 7-year-old daughter, Rosalind, good night, and then returned downstairs. She told her maid she was going for a drive, climbed into her beloved Morris Cowley, and drove off into the darkness. She left behind a letter for her secretary, explaining she was going to Yorkshire. She would not be seen again for 11 days. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came the following morning. About 15 miles from her home, at a chalk quarry in Surrey known as Newlands Corner, Agatha's Morris Cowley was discovered abandoned. The car was lodged precariously at the edge of the steep pit, one wheel hanging over the drop. Its headlights were still on, and inside, the police found an expired driver's license, some clothing, and a fur coat she had left behind despite the winter chill. The Surrey police were immediately faced with a baffling crime scene. The car's condition suggested an accident or a struggle, yet there was no sign of Agatha Christie herself. Had she crashed and wandered off in a daze? Had she been abducted? Or, given the location near a well-known beauty spot, had she chosen this place to end her own life in a fit of despair over her husband's infidelity? Every possibility was grim. Colonel Archibald Christie was notified and quickly became the primary suspect in the public eye, and privately, for some of the police. His cold demeanor and the recent revelation of his affair with Nancy Neal provided a powerful motive for foul play. The press painted him as a callous and unfeeling husband who may have harmed his wife to be free to marry his lover. He was questioned extensively by the police. The search for Agatha Christie rapidly escalated into one of the largest manhunts in English history. Over 1,000 police officers were assigned to the case, an unprecedented number for a missing person. They meticulously combed the surrounding countryside, beating through thickets and dragging ponds, fearing they would find her body at any moment. The search was vast, desperate, and yielded absolutely nothing. The public became captivated by the mystery, and the search soon swelled with volunteers. More than 15,000 civilians descended on the Surrey countryside, eager to help find the famous author. They formed human chains, explored woodlands, and scanned the landscape for any clue. The event became a national obsession, with the fate of the Queen of Crime dominating every newspaper and conversation across the country. The search utilized new technology in a way that had never been seen before. For the first time in a British police investigation, airplanes were used to scour the landscape from above, their pilots looking for any sign of a body or a clue. The skies over Surrey buzzed with activity, a testament to the seriousness and scale of the operation. Yet the aerial view provided no more answers than the search on the ground. A particular focus of the search was a local, eerie body of water known as the Silent Pool. Its murky depths and local legends made it a prime suspect for a potential suicide location. Police divers repeatedly explored the freezing, dark water, their efforts hampered by the poor visibility. The press gathered at the pool's edge, waiting for a tragic discovery, but the Silent Pool, true to its name, gave up no secrets. The police investigation was hampered by a flood of false sightings and misleading clues. People from all over the country reported seeing Agatha Christie, leading police on a series of wild goose chases. The intense media coverage meant that every person with a theory or a supposed sighting felt compelled to come forward, burying the detectives in a mountain of useless information and adding to the chaos and confusion of the case. Amidst the speculation, the letters Agatha had left behind were scrutinized. The one to her secretary stated she was going to a spa in Yorkshire, but provided no details. A separate, more cryptic letter was sent to her brother-in-law, which he was instructed to open only if something happened to her. He received and read it, then promptly burned it, telling police it contained nothing of importance, a deeply suspicious act that only fueled further speculation. The media frenzy was relentless. Newspapers offered rewards for information, and headlines screamed with wild theories. Was it a publicity stunt to promote her latest novel, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd? Was it a nervous breakdown brought on by stress and grief? Or was it something more sinister, a revenge plot against her cheating husband, designed to cast suspicion upon him? The world was watching, and everyone had a theory. The case became so famous that other titans of the mystery genre were drawn in. Dorothy L. Sayers, another celebrated crime writer, actually visited the scene of the abandoned car, using her own detective skills to analyze the evidence. She publicly commented on the case, offering her own theories and insights, blurring the lines between fiction and the terrifying reality of her contemporary's disappearance. The investigation took a bizarre and supernatural turn when Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of the logical and rational Sherlock Holmes, became involved. Doyle, a fervent believer in spiritualism, took one of Agatha's discarded gloves to a famous medium named Horace Leaf. He hoped the medium could psychically locate the missing author, a strange intersection of science, fiction, and the paranormal. The medium, Horace Leaf, held the glove and declared that Agatha Christie was not dead, but was instead in a confused state. He claimed to sense that she would be found soon, and that the whole affair would be resolved. While the police continued their methodical, earthbound search, this paranormal consultation added another layer of strangeness to an already surreal national drama, a detail that seemed torn from a work of fiction. For 10 agonizing days, the search continued with no results. The police were exhausted, the public was on edge, and hope was beginning to fade. It seemed as though the world's greatest mystery writer had orchestrated a final, perfect vanishing act from which she would never return. The trail was ice cold, and the investigation had reached a complete and frustrating standstill. The nation prepared for the worst. Then on the 11th day, the breakthrough came. It did not come from a detective, a volunteer, or a psychic. It came from a member of staff at the elegant Harrogate Hydropathic Hotel, a fashionable spa resort in Yorkshire, more than 200 miles from where her car was found. A banjo player in the hotel's band recognized a fellow guest from her newspaper photograph and alerted the police. The police arrived at the Harrogate Hotel on the evening of December 14th. They cautiously approached the woman, who had been staying there for over a week. She had been seen dancing, playing cards, and reading the newspapers that were filled with stories about her own disappearance. When the officers confronted her, she appeared calm but confused. The great search was finally over. Agatha Christie had been found. The most shocking twist, a detail worthy of one of her own novels, was the name under which she had registered at the hotel. She had signed the guest book as Mrs. Teresa Neal. Neal was the surname of her husband's mistress, Nancy. The discovery was stunning. It immediately shifted the perception of the case from one of a potential victim to one of a calculated and deliberate act of deception or revenge. Colonel Archibald Christie traveled north to Harrogate to be reunited with his wife. When he arrived at the hotel, Agatha reportedly looked at him with no sign of recognition. She claimed to have no memory of who he was or who she was. She had no recollection of the past 11 days, of driving from her home, or of the national panic she had caused. She was, to all appearances, a complete amnesiac. The official explanation, supported by medical professionals at the time, was that Agatha had suffered a genuine psychological breakdown. They diagnosed her with a fugue state, a rare form of amnesia induced by trauma and depression. The combination of her mother's death and her husband's betrayal had, they claimed, caused her to lose her sense of identity and flee her life, creating a new, temporary one in Harrogate. However, the public and the press were deeply skeptical. The choice of the name, Teresa Neal, seemed too specific, too pointed, to be a coincidence of amnesia. Many believed the entire affair was an elaborate hoax. The most popular theory was that she had staged her disappearance in a brilliant, cruel plot to humiliate her husband, and perhaps even frame him for her murder, only to lose her nerve and reappear. Another enduring theory was that it was an elaborate publicity stunt. The Murder of Roger Ackroyd had been published earlier that year and was a massive success. Some cynics suggested that her publisher, or even Agatha herself, had orchestrated the disappearance to generate headlines and boost book sales. While there has never been any evidence to support this, the theory has persisted for decades. A more compassionate interpretation suggests it was simply a desperate cry for help. Overwhelmed by grief and heartbreak, Agatha may have fled not to punish her husband or sell books, but simply to escape an unbearable reality. In this view, her actions in Harrogate, dancing, socializing, were not those of a cunning plotter, but of a woman trying to become someone else, anyone else, to escape her own pain for a short while. The aftermath was difficult for Agatha. She became even more famous, but now for her own personal mystery rather than her fictional ones. She was hounded by the press and faced a public that was divided between sympathy and suspicion. The cost of the massive police search was also a point of public contention, with some demanding she should have to pay for the resources used to find her. In the end, the marriage could not be saved. Agatha and Archibald Christie divorced in 1928. Archie went on to marry Nancy Neal, the woman at the center of the whole affair. Agatha, meanwhile, retained custody of their daughter Rosalind and threw herself into her work and her travels, determined to build a new life for herself out of the wreckage of the old one. 2 years later, while on a trip to the Middle East, she met a young archaeologist named Max Mallowan. They fell in love and married, embarking on a long and happy partnership that lasted for the rest of her life. She found a personal happiness that had seemed impossible in the dark days of 1926, and her most prolific and successful writing period was still ahead of her. Despite finding happiness and continuing her legendary career, Agatha Christie never once, in public or in private, spoke about what truly happened during those 11 lost days. The subject was completely off-limits. In her own autobiography, a detailed account of her life, she makes no mention of the event whatsoever, skipping from just before the disappearance to the period immediately after, leaving a deliberate and silent gap. This resolute silence is perhaps the most compelling part of the mystery. By refusing to explain her actions, she allowed the speculation to flourish for nearly a century. Her silence protected her privacy, but also cemented her disappearance as an enigma. She took the true motive, the real story of what happened in her mind, with her to the grave, leaving us with only theories. The theories continue to be debated to this day. Was it a genuine fugue state, a medical anomaly born of extreme stress? Was it a calculated revenge plot against a faithless husband? Was it a desperate attempt to win him back by showing him how much the world would miss her? Or was it simply an impulsive flight from a life that had become too painful to bear? The event has become a permanent part of her legend, a real-life mystery that rivals any of her fictional plots. It has inspired countless books, documentaries, and films, each attempting to fill in the blank pages she left behind. The story resonates because it shows a vulnerable, human side to a literary icon, a moment when the orderly world of her detective stories was shattered by the chaos of real life. Her abandoned car at Newland's Corner, the massive search party, the strange alias at the Harrogate Hotel, these are the clues. But unlike one of her novels, there is no brilliant detective to appear in the final chapter and explain everything. We are left with a collection of perplexing facts and a central character who refused to testify, leaving the final, definitive solution forever out of reach. The disappearance of Agatha Christie remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the 20th century, not because of a lack of evidence, but because the evidence points in so many different directions. It is a true crime story without a clear crime, a mystery without a definitive villain or victim, a puzzle where the most crucial piece, the motive, is permanently missing. In the end, the woman who sold billions of books by providing tidy solutions to complex crimes left behind one that can never be solved. It remains the one plot twist that the queen of crime herself either could not, or would not, ever explain, ensuring that her own life would be her most enduring and baffling mystery of all.